Good evening and welcome to the February 11th, 2015 work session of the Richmond Community Schools Board of School Trustees. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We are ready for our statement of mission.
Richmond Community Schools guides students on pathways of learning to a future of limitless possibilities.
Thank you, Susie. And now our vision.
Richmond Community Schools, a community nurturing mind, body, and spirit to prepare students for lives of choice, purpose, and service.
Thank you very much. And now?
And now we're ready to move to our showcase video. For showcase video, then we'll have introductions by Ms. Bergdahl and get to hear from outstanding staff in the preschool program.
Let me go ahead.
Well, here at Westview, we focus on alphabet, numbers, colors, shapes, practicing writing their name, social skills, and pretty much all the academic skills they need for kindergarten. I have 36 students, and some of them come Monday, Wednesday, Friday, some of them come Tuesday, Thursday, and some come 5 days. Usually we work on getting along with each other at playtime. We have social skills where we learn the right time when we should play, the right time when we should talk to our friends, and those are like playtime, breakfast, or lunch. And then our academic we work on for our circle time, which we do calendar, smartboard, the table work, that's our academic work, that's not our social skills. We do social skills at the tables, but it's more academic work. Needs kids, they require and get more one-on-one skills.
One of the main things that we work on are kids following directions, sitting, learning how to hold still, writing their name, working on their alphabet, counting from one, well, we work on 1 to 100, but we'll take 1 to 10. And just mostly just skills with each other. That's what you have to work on. We have Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We have Tuesday and Thursday, and then we have every day. They attend from 8:30 to 11, and then 12 to 2:30.
My name is Bridget Hazelbaker, and I'm the event coordinator for the Kindergarten Rocks Preschool Rules event for Richmond Community Schools. And the preschool rules event in the past has been at the elementary schools, at all 6 of the schools, and this year we're trying something different. We're going to coordinate it and combine it with Kindergarten Rocks. So on April 16th, on Thursday at Tarrant Center, from 4 to 6, we'll be having Kindergarten Rocks and preschool rules. So every kindergarten teacher in Richmond Community Schools and every preschool teacher in Richmond Community Schools will be at Tarrant Center. And you'll be able to meet all those families, and we'll have school supply list, and each child will receive a backpack with school supplies, a free dinner. Your children have opportunity to sit on a bus and see what a school bus is like. And then we also have different service learning opportunities, which will be Boys and Girls Club will be there, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Lemonade Day. Birth to 5 is a huge partner that'll be there to give us some kindergarten readiness opportunities and preschool readiness opportunities for us. So again, that is on April 16th, Thursday, from 4 to 6 at the Tarrant Center, and that address is 380 Hutchinson Parkway.
I'd like to thank Mr. Russell and Bridget Hazelbaker. Just did a wonderful job going around, and the 2 students from the high school that did the videos and going into our preschool programs. And I know they worked very hard on the videos, so I want to thank them for their efforts. Yep, I think it's going to open up. Okay, I'm sorry.
Hey, Scott.
It's usually up.
Okay. Maybe you guys are fine.
Okay, I apologize. Okay, this evening, I thought, as we go over the preschool program, I do have some teachers that are here this evening, and I'd like to introduce them as we go to our organizational chart. But at your seat, you have a placemat that was made by students at our preschool, and we thought that you would like to have that as a little momentum as for this evening. And also, there's a brochure that talks about the preschool program that 3 of our teachers developed, and we will be distributing them out to the community and the different places at the doctors and different places that we know that families will be visiting. At this time, we have about 314 students that are enrolled in our preschool program. We have 160 boys, and we have 154 girls, and we have 136 students that have IEPs that receive special services from that group. So at the very beginning, there was a vision of several people, I believe. Dr. Parker is sitting here this evening, and I know that she's very instrumental of being one of those people that felt that it was very important for Richmond Community Schools to serve our preschool population. And the board, I know, was very supportive of that. You continue to support us, and we appreciate it. I have a notebook that's going around that has all the beginnings of the Early Learning Center over at the Baxter Building, and it has clippings in there of the grand opening and all the information of how it got started and why it got started, and we do thank the board for the continued support. And that happened around 2004, and we did have it was a very good center. It was called the Early Learning Family Literacy Center. And so that was in place until 2012. And when we did our restructuring in the district, we decided preschool programs would be placed in elementaries. So we do have all of our elementaries at this time, 6 elementaries, have programs in their buildings for the preschool. And the reasoning behind that was so that then the students lived in the residential area of that school when they went to preschool, then the transition to kindergarten was going to be easier. So this is our organizational chart. You can see here we have our teachers, the preschool teachers, and I would like to introduce those that are here this evening. We have Natalie Abernathy. You have to stand. And she teaches at Crestdale. And we also have Deborah Sizemore, who teaches at Crestdale in our special ed early childhood preschools program. And then we have also at Crestdale, we have Amanda Enderstrode, and we also have Kristen Connor, and they have our general ed preschool program there at Crestdale. We have Kathy Loomis that's here tonight from Fairview. And you saw Jenny Duvall earlier in the video. She's at Westview. And we have, from Elizabeth Starr Academy, we have Marilyn Gleason, who is our paraprofessional. She kind of pitch hits sometimes as our preschool teacher when we've had somebody out, so she kind of does a double role sometime. Also, we have Emily Dickerson, and she is our speech and language pathologist, and she goes to all of our preschool programs and also Head Start. And we have Amy Zimmerman, who's our early childhood special ed teacher, along with her. They will be presenting this evening about the evaluation process, how we have where our students come from First Steps and also from Child Find. So, but we do have a program at Charles. We have 2 programs at Fairview, 1 at Vale, 2 at Westview, and the 4 at Crestdale that we just talked about. Now, I thought it would probably be a lot more entertaining for you to see the students in the PowerPoint than hear me talk. So here's kind of the beginning. We talk about the readiness skills of our students, and if you ever have an opportunity to go, I will tell you, you just kind of lose yourself. It's so much fun, and you can just see them absorb all the information and instruction that the teacher is doing because they're just so eager. And so this is about getting ready for kindergarten. And then we have times where our classes go out into the community, and we all know that through experiences, our children develop, vocabulary and the experiences in the classroom, and so they pull all that together and they go on a field trip. This is the one at the Safety Village. So this is Mrs. Sizemore's class, I believe. Letter identification. We know that it's important for the students to learn letter identification, and they learn to write, they learn to recognize it, they learn to name it, and they learn their fine motor skills in developing that. This is kind of what a typical preschool classroom looks like. As you can see, we have lots of visuals. We have the rug on the floor where all the children sit for circle time or whatever, for smart board and for calendar. And the teachers all have a smart board in their classroom, and they all have an iPad. And so technology, Mr. Tidrow's technology department has supported us very well, as Dr. Parker has through her title money in supporting with purchasing of technology. We also have some science time where the students learn to do some different experiments, and that could be with weather or colors or seasonal type topics or holidays. And we know that students are very eager at this time to learn all that. This was a picture that one of the teachers sent me that's one of the craft times. And as we've talked about crafts, I think it's a very important time because we know, first of all, that they're cutting or they're gluing or whatever they're doing with their craft. But if you go into that time and you see 15 of them and you see the teacher and the paraprofessional and they're all gluing or they all have glitter or whatever, it's really a fun time, but it's also a developmental time. And the teachers have to be very organized, as you all know. If you have 15 little ones and some of them can cut, some of them can color, some of them can't, it just doesn't always flow like you think it would, but they do a lot of preparation and ready to get time for the crafts. And then the last picture we have here is of our speech and language services, and you can see Mrs. Dickerson is in this picture. And they go into the classroom and they work on those speech and language skills with the students. So we're very appreciative of her time that she spends with our students. You want to come help me? Okay. One of the things I do want to show you this evening is as I attended one of Mr. Tidrow's Tech Expo sessions this summer, he talked about the Pinterest site, and so we introduced it to the preschool, and they have developed their own Pinterest site, and it's called We Are Preschool. And so the teachers go through and they post different things that they have done throughout the week or whatever. This is the interaction with other teachers in the district, or if they find something, even on Pinterest, right? We're all on Pinterest. And we find something that's at preschool level that we think we can use in the classroom, and so they post it on here, and then everybody can share their different crafts or activities. And it's just a really neat networking for the teachers because they are across the district, and I'm sure during the daytime they don't have time to either call or sit down at their computer and email somebody and say, hey, I did this wonderful experiment or this wonderful craft today, and it really worked well with my students. So this was our way of kind of putting something together, and Mr. Tidrow has put it out on, what is the site that you work through?
The Indiana DOE
Yeah, the
e-learning site.
That DOE, yeah.
Yes, the Indiana.
So we just appreciate the fact that they have an opportunity to network within our own system and use the computers and technology. So at this time, I'm going to ask Emily and Amy if they would like to come up and do their presentation on how we receive our students as far as first steps and the evaluation process. And I'll let you girls take it.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Emily Dickerson, the speech therapist for preschools and within the Richmond Community Schools. And this is my 9th year here at Richmond, and is with preschool the entire time. So I'm very fortunate that I've been able to stick with preschool because I love it so much. And I'm Amy Zimmerman, and I've been with Richmond Community Schools for 19 years. I've been with the preschool for about 12 years. So I've been here my whole teaching career. So Jenny Aloriaga is not with us tonight. She is at home with her newborn. So I'm sure she is thinking of us and wishing she could be here, but I'm sure she's enjoying her time at home as well. Absolutely. So our presentation does not have a lot of children things that just a lot of information that we'd like to share, but the wonderful piece that we can share with you is that we get to have the first experience with families and with children entering our school. So we get that opportunity to be the very first experience that our families have with Richmond Community Schools. Absolutely. Okay, going through, if I just hit the space bar? Okay. The first one is identifying preschool students. One of the ways that we identify the children is through First Steps. And First Steps is a family-centered program providing intervention services to infants to 3-year-olds with disabilities. So we receive information about children through referrals that are sent to us prior to their 3rd birthday. We do transition meetings with the families. Then after that, we plan for evaluations to be conducted. Then we do reports and evaluations, and then prior to their 3rd birthday, we have them placed if services are needed to be received, and they begin on their 3rd birthday for Richmond Community Schools and services. The next way that we identify students is through screenings. We have screenings the first Friday of every month at Crestdale Elementary. And the team members that are part of those part of those screenings are the professionals that you see listed there. We meet and down in our office area, and we walk the students down, and we have our screenings at that time. And that's when we determine whether or not we feel like they need a further evaluation, or if we would just recommend preschool for those types of students as well. Oftentimes, some of the teachers in the classrooms, in our preschool classrooms, or at the Head Start sites might have concerns, so we might have a teacher request, and that might be one way that we pick up a student that might need a screening. So we'll go into the classroom and possibly do a brief screening, and at that time, if that warrants a further evaluation, we will send home a notice or contact a parent and suggest that we do further testing, and at that time we will get the parent permission, and we will begin the testing at that time. The next way that we have resources is through the community. We get a lot of calls through doctor's offices, daycare providers, the Excel program. They contact us at Crestdale, and we either contact the families to see if they're interested in having a screening completed, or we go straight into possibly an evaluation determining on the typical child. But there is a list there as to who we receive referrals from within the community. Another possibly the screenings, we screen Head Start. We do speech and language screenings on all students at all the 8 Head Start sites, morning and afternoon sessions, and that's approximately 300 students that attend the Head Start sites in Richmond. The next section that we're going to talk about is the evaluation process. And like Miss Amy was saying, once we would determine that we would like to do the evaluation, we first get parent permission. Of course, we have to have that. And then we have a 50-day timeline in order to get the evaluation completed. We get that done as quickly as possible because we know that the students, the sooner they can start, the sooner it's for their benefit. But we have to go through this list as to getting our information of social developmental history. We do a classroom observation. Evaluations are administered to the child. We write our reports. We send them home. We have the case conference within the schools that they would be attending based on their address. And then once the case conference is completed, the student can start school and start receiving services at that time. So.
We also have a list of eligibility for special education services, and those eligibilities go all the way from 3 to all the way through high school. Our primary eligibilities that we deal with a lot in early childhood is the developmental delay, and that is for ages 3 to 5-year-olds. And with that, that looks at all of the developmental delays. Can be like a social delay, a speech impairment, a language impairment, the cognitive delay. However, before they enter kindergarten, they have to be evaluated again to see if they would qualify for any more special education services. So before they exit into kindergarten, they have to be tested again because that label cannot carry into kindergarten in the state of Indiana.
The next section is our referral data. We gathered this information from last school year, and this gives you a list as to how many students were referred based on different areas for First Steps, Richmond Community Schools, Head Start, or within the community. And then from those referrals, how many students we evaluated, and then from those evaluations, how many students we placed. There is some discrepancies between those numbers, as you can tell, but those discrepancies are based on a variety of reasons. Sometimes students are dismissed from First Step services before they come into our school-based program, which is a good thing since that early intervention's showing progress. Sometimes families decline services. They want to wait a little bit and see if the child develops a little bit more. Sometimes students move out of the district, so they're no longer part of our Richmond Community Schools area. And sometimes after multiple attempts, we're just not able to make contact with those families. So unfortunately, we aren't able to place those students. But those are the numbers that we had from last year. And then the next section is the reevaluation process.
Typically, reevaluations for most children are every 3 years. However, with a developmental delay, as I had mentioned before, they can't go into kindergarten with that. So with that said, sometimes a student that we receive has to be evaluated twice within a school year. So we might get them and then they have to be reevaluated. We might get them in September or October and then they have to turn around and be reevaluated in, say, April or May. So with that being said, then we have to involve more people in that process. So last school year, we had 32 reevaluations that were completed. So that's quite a bit. That's a lot of times our preschool kiddos, that's a lot of, we go through a lot of evaluations and reevaluations out there. Plus servicing kids.
The next section is the services that we offer. There is a list of team members that provide services within the Richmond Community Schools, occupational therapists, speech therapists, physical therapists, and of course early childhood special education teachers. Miss Amy and I are the two Richmond Community Schools employees that service kids at Head Start. And as at this time, as Mrs. Bergdahl was saying, the numbers are what they are in regards to how many kids are enrolled and how many students receive services. So
yeah, our numbers are a little bit different than the one that she presented to you earlier, because we put this PowerPoint together a few weeks ago. So I think her numbers were a lot. I mean, they change all the time.
Yeah, it's constantly changing.
So,
but we hope you enjoyed this information. We thank you for the opportunity to present it to you. We would definitely like to thank our preschool teachers and their dedication and their hard work for all that they've done for our students. And we'd also like to thank the board for all your support in our program as well. So, thank you.
Thank you. Say a few things.
Sure.
When they talk about the evaluations and the reevaluations and the screening, that's all free to our parents.
Right.
So, there, you know, if you'd have to go out and get an evaluation that these two ladies would have to do, it would be expensive. So, it is a free screening and it's free evaluation that they give our parents. So that's wonderful. And then we also have one of our principals back here tonight, Mrs. Hobbs is here.
who has 4 of our preschool programs, and they have just been wonderful. The principals have welcomed the preschool programs into their buildings, and, you know, it took a little while to kind of get used to, you know, being in a building and elementaries, but it's just part of it now, so it's worked really well, and we really appreciate the support of the principals, so thank you. Thank you, ladies, so much for coming this evening. Do you have any questions of the teachers, or they were going to make you get up and dance or do something, a preschool activity?
Lots of songs and dancing in preschool.
But we really wanted to focus on that we do support the academics, trying to get the students ready for kindergarten, and we know that that's the important thing in order for them to be able to move on through the grade levels, so.
This is just a piece of what we do.
Right.
The other piece, the other piece is what we go out and service the students that then we qualified. So, but a lot of it is with our teachers here. We couldn't do it without them. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, and I just have to say that I've had the opportunity to work with many of these fine people, and believe me, if anyone out there in our audience or our TV audience is looking for a preschool, check out Richmond Community Schools, because these gals, they know what they're doing, and they will take your child and they will embrace them, they will love them, they will care for them, they will teach them, and the kids have so much fun. So just make sure that you check out our preschool and our fine people who are working with our youngest learners. And I happen to have Trinity's, and I am happy to know that she loves pink and that she wants to be a princess. So thanks again. And now
We are to public commentary.
we are.
We have Kelly McDermott.
Welcome, Kelly.
Good evening.
Good evening.
As we come together this evening to participate in one of the most fundamental manifestations of our democracy, the school board meeting, public schools in the state of Indiana are under duress. Ironically, this effort is being led by another fundamental manifestation of democracy, our citizen legislators. With this in mind, I believe it's worthwhile to remind ourselves and those citizen legislators that the founding fathers of this great democracy believed in public education. John Adams in 1785 wrote, "The whole people must take upon themselves the education of the whole people and be willing to bear the expense of it. There should not be a district of 1 mile square without a school in it, not founded by a charitable individual, but maintained at the public expense of the people themselves." These are particularly timely words as the Indiana House of Representatives and the Indiana State Senate debate and push forward bills which would increase funding for charter schools and private schools while stripping away the complexity index, which makes funds available for schools who are challenged by a multitude of issues related to poverty. Though I have never been known to be at a loss for words, I would like to share with you the words of a public school principal as shared in a writing authored by Diane Ravitch. Why do we have public schools? Would we be better off, as certain reformers now think, if everyone had a school choice and went to a charter or used a voucher to go to a private or a religious school? Do we need public schools? Diane Ravitch asked Carol Burris, the principal of Southside High School in Rockville Center, New York, how she would answer these questions. And this is what Carol wrote. "When I think of the purpose of public schooling, I always think of Dewey's famous phrase that's stenciled into the entrance wall of Teachers College. Schools are the fundamental method of social progress and reform." I believe that these words are as true today as when they were first included in John Dewey's pedagogic creed. There is a compact that exists between a community and its public school. It's a promise that the school will teach every child that passes through its doors, poor children, affluent children, children with disabilities, and children who show great academic promise. The common public school is required to teach the easy to teach and the difficult to teach. The common public school is there for the student with strong parent advocates and for the child who is, for all practical purposes, alone. Most important of all, it is where such children meet and sit side by side in classrooms, on bleachers, and in cafeterias. They learn from each other as surely as they learn from their teacher. That social learning is also what gives rise to the promise of social progress and social reform. I attended a private high school where I met children who looked like me, thought like me, and prayed like me. It was a good school, but I did not have as rich an experience as the public school students who attend my school. There were no students with substantial learning disabilities in my high school. It was a test-in school, so no one struggled with academics. Only 2 of the students who attended were black, and none of the students were poor. There was learning that I missed during my teenage years. I am glad we sent our daughters to public school. Charters and privates are not designed to serve all students. They're designed to serve students who are more like each other than not. Although there may be some diversity, those who are truly different either never apply, are never accepted, or are often counseled out. One has to only look at the New York City schools, which are becoming more segregated and stratified by income than ever before, to understand the outcome of charters, selection policies, and choice. We can take the easy road that leads to improvement for some kids at the expense of others, or the more difficult road that will improve education for all kids. Without vibrant, supported public schools, the second option doesn't have a chance. Those were the words of Carol. The real purpose of speaking this evening is not to try to sway or to call to action the members of this board, or for that matter, the administrative team of Richmond Community Schools. My real purpose is to speak to the public, those in attendance at this meeting and those who are watching this exercise in democracy from home. You are needed. On behalf of your children and the teachers who are given the privilege of teaching them, I am asking you to contact Governor Pence, Senator Ratz, Representative McMillan, and Representative Ham. Our unified message for our citizen legislators is to ask that they reject attempts aimed at defunding our public schools and instead support them as the guardian of democracy that our founding fathers recognized. We ask that our legislators cease focusing on issues that really have little or nothing to do with educating our students, like stripping Superintendent Ritz of the authority that voters entrusted to her, and instead focus on rolling up their sleeves and asking what can be done to assist the Indiana Department of Education in a collaborative effort to deliver the highest quality education possible for our young people. We ask that our legislators spend more time on critical issues like bringing jobs to Indiana, so that our citizens can have the dignity of work and spend less time trying to strip away working educators of their rights and dignity as professionals by attacking their professional association, the Indiana State Teachers Association. To those of you here in attendance and watching at home, I ask that you contact our governor and our state legislators and encourage them to engage in more collaborative problem solving and less politicking. John Adams was at times both a friend with and a rival of Thomas Jefferson, but they both shared a passion for the importance of an educated citizenry. Jefferson said, "If a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be." Our founding fathers understood the value of quality education for all citizens. Please contact your state legislator and make sure that they know you do as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Well said. And now,
We're to the consent agenda. We have 5 different areas under consent agenda, so we're ready to move.
okay, all those in favor of the consent agenda, well, I need a motion first. Getting ahead of myself here. We'll get this meeting over quickly. Okay, thank you, Susie. Motion made by Susie Hively, seconded by Dixie Robinson. Comments or questions? Suzanne?
I have a question about the third grade academy. I may have missed it, but I thought we were moving towards working with a little bit younger student.
Well, there's some discussion that
Yeah,
Mr. Millis
that
and I
is
had, so we
accurate.
can-
We are choosing to try to assist our students to pass the third grade test.
The first
And,
time, right?
That will be the first priority.
Right.
In the past, we've identified further third graders. So we're going to have kind of a blend of requests for a proposal for those students who haven't passed third grade reading, whatever that ends up. I read today that that may be one of the tests that's removed. So I'm sure we'll identify students who are not reading at level. The second piece would be to expand second graders and also for continuation, a very successful ELL program that was started last year.
Okay.
So I think that's the direction we'd like to move. But because we are able to put more teachers and instructional assistants with students, we're still going to evaluate that and see if it's something we want to maintain or redesign and take that piece over ourselves.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Now we're ready for action items.
Okay, the first action item here is the 2015-16 calendar, and we've just, after preparing board packets, had another revision. I know Elisa says this is draft number 5, but I think it must be draft number 5D or F or something, because we've had number 5. What we discovered here today, actually early this morning, I guess, is that we needed to move the September 15 day as a teacher work day to September 17, because September 17 is the beginning of a new grading period. And that was just the minor tweak that we needed to make in that. There's been lots of discussion, and I certainly want to thank Elisa because she has worked on this for weeks, and all of us are interested in the calendar. It affects everybody everywhere, so we have it ready. We had a lot of discussion about where to place the work days. We went back and forth and met with multiple groups and talking about that. And it seemed that from all of those that we were able to speak with, that having 2 days in August was important. But there was not the desire to have 2 days at the winter break. They felt that it would be much better to spread those. So you'll see that we have one of those September 17, and then we have another in March. So that's the reason for the movement of those that we'd shown earlier as 2-day work sessions.
I'd just like to add one more thing. We had teachers helping on the committee, Aubrey Wildy, Barbara Smith, and Lee Reed. Jeff Thorne always helps with the calendar because we need to make sure we're coordinated with Civic Hall, and we just appreciate their patience, time, and effort.
Okay. Do I have a motion to accept the calendar? A motion made by Kelly Baumgartner, seconded by Aaron Stevens. Comments or questions?
I'm glad it's starting on a Wednesday.
That helps.
Just FYI.
What was it, not last year, but the year before, we went a
Monday,
whole
yeah.
week. We started on a Monday, and
Yeah.
by Friday, we had a lot of tired kids and tired teachers and staff. So, okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Okay, we move next to the technology computer purchase that we have on the agenda asking for your approval. This technology computer purchase will come from the use of technology bond funds. And as we've indicated in the backup memo, that we will be able to purchase 390 laptops and at a price of $125,000. So we felt that we had really gotten a good price break here. And we know that our English teachers at the high school are eager to have these in their hands at the moment. So we're hoping that we would be able to get those purchased and get them in their hands very soon.
Could you share, Dr. Poindexter, where that money is coming from, please?
Yes, that's the use of the technology bond funds.
Correct.
So that is different than the general fund?
Yes, it is, absolutely, or the.
Or the capital.
Capital projects. No, it's very different from that.
Okay, I need a motion, please, to accept.
So moved.
Motion made by Aaron Stevens, seconded by Susie Hively. Comments or questions? Dixie?
Does that give the teachers enough computers, since the English classes, the books will be online? Does that give
Right.
them enough?
This will tie into the software that's part of the curriculum now, and each classroom will have enough in the cart. We're going to keep them inside the classroom, so each of the English teachers will have those available. They're ready for those. They've been using the software on their side, for the teacher side. We have Mr. Amix, who is in the alternative side, in the lower level, actually using it with the students, because they have devices, and they're using them already. But this will give the students access to all that curriculum that Mr. Millis demonstrated a few months ago in front of the board. So
I just add, I think the writing features
Right.
really will enhance learning. There's a writing component with the software and textbooks, but also just the ability to do research on the internet and write papers on a daily basis will be a big upgrade. And the devices we're purchasing, if for some point in time here in the next year or two, we can move to more of a, I'll call it one-to-one, but digital in the classroom environment, they can be utilized, repurposed in that kind of format, because we would collect those at the end of the year anyway and repurpose them and get them all ready for the next year. So I just feel like we, among others, that it's time to push that out and get that going and upgrade our use at the high school. It's where we see our biggest gap right now. They're not a Title I building where we've been able to utilize some of those funds for iPads, and I just think we'll learn a lot from this, how digital tech, how the digital curriculum works, and also the ability and access of writing for papers and compositions and research papers, and also learn about our bandwidth and our Wi-Fi.
So that's the reason for the laptops, is for the writing part.
That's a big piece, yes. But it also, all the textbooks and the added features that go with that would be on there. And let's just say if a Wi-Fi were down, they have the hardbound copies they're using right now in the classroom.
Okay.
And I'm making an assumption, but I believe that much of the testing that our kids do is online, and so I would hope that these things will be compatible with that, so it will alleviate the use in the labs and such.
Right. And right now, we have our science department over there. They have laptops that they keep in the each of the rooms, and they can do all their internal assessments and research and so forth. So that's a good model that we're using. But you're right, we've got to have those devices ready for them as we get more and more assessments out there, whether it's the AccuPlacer or the new iStep next year over there. So we're spending a lot of time with those assessments, but those will work fine for them. So.
Suzanne?
Where are we with, or have we kind of tabled the idea of bring your own device?
Bring your own is successful more in those areas where families have more opportunities to purchase maybe laptops or other devices. One of the models we've looked at is actually two schools, Avon and Zionsville. That's a much different clientele, if you will. And they have a lot, what they've noticed is they have to be really restrictive on the devices that they allow on campus.
Okay.
If you look at the model at the higher ed, Indiana University and so forth, they have a different responsibility level with the students. They're adults at that level, so they can bring about any device they want. With what they're seeing with the K-12 is you have to be more restrictive. So you're almost defining what product they need to bring on campus. So not that we won't be there sometime. I don't think we're there yet, but it would help us out as a corporation, but I don't think our student body's ready for that. So.
But aren't there teachers that use some of the personal devices? I mean, are there people using?
We have several students over at the high school that use cell phones or other smaller devices, depending on the teacher. She or he could say, you can use that device in the classroom and so forth. We have seen some iPads come on campus from the students, but we haven't seen a great deal yet. I think some of the AP students are maybe using their own laptops.
And are they
but-
accessing our Wi-Fi with those?
Right, they get on our guest Wi-Fi, which
Okay.
is restricted and
Okay.
safe over there, so they don't get onto our business network, so, yes. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Not? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay, next is our request for permission to publicize the notice to the bidders for the sale of the Garrison property. You've had discussions about this before and have kind of been waiting, I think, for us to get to this stage. And with the help of our attorney and others, we are now at the point to come back and ask for permission to publish.
Okay, I need a motion, please.
So moved.
Motion made by Suzanne Darengowski, seconded by Aaron Stevens. Comments or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Okay. And the next is request permission to advertise for the RFP for the demolition of the Garrison property.
Okay, I need a motion. Motion made by Kelly Baumgardner, seconded by Dixie Robinson. Comments or questions? Jeff?
Because there really wasn't any detail attached with this, but this is the complete building and the cabin still standing, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Ron?
I think for the benefit of the viewing public, that we really aren't being crazy when we say we want to sell the building, then we're
And
going to
demolish it, right. Yes, that's true.
If you recall back in November, when the Garrison was discussed, as to its future, as to the financial implications of continued ownership, mothballing, what have you, the board really wanted to get as much information as it could, and that's the purpose of this. The request for bidders is just that, a request to sell Garrison as is. We've still got the issue of the cabin out there that I'll have to address in the specifications, and will, because we're not quite sure how that's going to go. So it'll probably be to bid without the cabin included, with the RCS to remove it at its expense at some period of time, with an alternate: A, how much would you pay for the cabin if we leave it, and B, are you willing to accept it if at that price, you know? So those are issues that are yet to be determined, because I don't think we've located a site that is an obvious choice to relocate the cabin. But at the same time, if you recall the initial appraisal that you had from Mr. Napodi, and I think reinforced by the second appraisal, also suggested that the value of the property would be greater if the structure were not on it. So I think at that point, the board members wanted to have some kind of indicator as to what it would cost to take the building down. And in that vein, in response to Member Slifer's question, there will be an alternate also bid on the removal of the concrete.
Correct.
And of course, implicit in all this is the proper disposal of all the materials in accordance with all applicable laws and regulations. So, and we're coordinating the timing so that the RFP lands, and you have that information at the same time. We will probably be bringing you the results of our bidding, which is kind of like a silent auction, only it's not so silent. We post the bids on our website, and anybody that, we have to get 90% of the average of the two appraisals before we can close the bidding. If we get a bid like that, then, and there's an inclination for the administration to bring forward a recommendation to accept it, before we can do that, we have to contact anyone else who's bid and give them a chance to raise their bid, and then that continues until we have no further bidding once we have an acceptable bid. So there's a lot of balloons, if you will, in the air. This is by design, and hopefully by, and we're about a month behind, and that's understandable with some of the events that we didn't plan in November having transpired.
Yes.
Hopefully by the end of April, the board will have the information it needs, and we'll be able to go forward with the proper disposal, whatever that becomes, of the Garrison property inside.
Thank you.
I think we'd planned action on December 10, and now we're shooting maybe for April 22.
That's our plan.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Now we are ready for reports and discussion topics.
Superintendent search update.
Well, I think we'll start out and have the survey committee kind of give us a update on the survey part of our search.
Well, as you are aware, the survey closed on Friday, and we are currently going through the surveys and getting pretty close to getting through them all, and then it'll be a matter of crunching the numbers so that we can present the results in a way that are meaningful to the board. I'm hoping that we can have that out to people by the middle or end of next week so that you'll have an opportunity to reflect on it before we actually need to use the results to come up with, as was our stated purpose, interview questions and topics.
Okay, and so that brings me to a conversation that we need to have concerning the interview questions, because the board is meeting with the university search team on March the 4th, and at that time we will be looking through the applications and we'll be beginning to think about conducting interviews in which we will need to have the interview questions. So, we have a pretty short time frame here. And so what I was thinking, and you all chime in here because obviously I haven't been through this before on this side of the table, was that perhaps we needed to have a special board meeting. It would be a public board meeting to begin to, or to do the interview questions, to formulate those questions. And so since the survey information will be presented at the February 26th board meeting, we would need to begin that process after that time. So as I looked at the calendar, we would have February the 26th, which is a Thursday, March the 2nd would be a Monday, March the 3rd would be a Tuesday, in which we could formulate those questions. So now what I want us to discuss is, do you want us to do a Survey Monkey to see which of those dates? Did I say that right? Because I'm always saying monkey survey, but okay, Survey Monkey. I'm getting better.
Either way works, really.
Or what are your thoughts?
Could you say those dates again, please?
February 26th, which is the day after our board meeting, Monday, March the 2nd, Tuesday, March the 3rd. First of all, I guess, how do you feel about us coming together to formulate these questions? Is that what your thinking was, that we would do this as a team?
Isn't the university search team helping with that also?
No.
No?
That's our responsibility.
I think the coming together and formulating them as an entire board is fine. That way, we've all had input. The common thoughts that we have, we can just encapsulate them in the number of questions that we're going to ask.
Anybody else? Dixie?
Well, and I'm glad we're doing this after we finish with the student forums, because what the kids are coming up with for questions are amazing. They're just right on top of it.
I have to share one of my favorite comments. I think it was the meeting that I was in yesterday. There was a lot of discussion about having a superintendent who would be in the buildings, be good at relating with kids, somebody the kids could talk to, and the kids were so wonderful as they were talking. And one of the other students in the room said, well, I'd like to piggyback on that thought in a very, it was, and the comment was, and I think that probably this person ought to be a good at relating with adults too. Because that's who they're going to spend a lot of time with besides the kids.
Well, and so to update everyone, we have begun our student forums. We have had 2 so far. One on Tuesday at Hibbard Intermediate School, or Hibbard Program Building. And today we had one at Test. And tomorrow there is one at Dennis. And then next, help me with the date. Next Tuesday is at Richmond High School. And so we have quite a diverse group of students that are, today at Test, it was 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th all together. I don't know what at Hibbard, what, do you remember the grade levels?
All grade levels.
It was all grade levels, and it was a mix of early college and logos.
Okay.
And the kids were, they're just, we should be very proud of our kids.
Absolutely. That's what I was just going to say. You being able to participate in these things just makes you know why we do this.
That's exactly right. So, anyway, the student forums are going well, and as soon as we get those finished next Tuesday, then all of our forums will be complete. Our survey was taken off of the website on Friday. That was the ending date for that. And so we have a lot of information that we will be going over.
I stepped on you.
Go
Is
ahead.
the high school forum, is it actually next week or is it the week after that?
I thought it was, it's
24th?
the 24th.
It's the 24th.
Okay.
So maybe a week.
Okay, I was just
later.
double checking.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you for clarifying that.
So,
Not in the top of my head.
Okay.
so I think it's at like 10.
Yeah, that sounds about
something. It's
I'd
in the
have to
morning.
double check.
So the purpose of us choosing one of these 3 dates for a meeting, I mean, are we going to decide the structure then? At what, by that I mean 6 or 7 board members, 7 questions that we ask, the same questions we ask all the participants?
I think we need to have that discussion.
Based on all the,
Because I could see myself having a question based on some of the response, so I want to have some flexibility and maybe a second question.
Right, and I think the search team will help us with that also, but our main purpose of meeting will be to formulate the interview questions, and we may formulate more than we'll use, but at least we need to have that accomplished so that when we're ready to start scheduling the interviews, and Dr. Poindexter, maybe you can help with this since you have done this a few times. Once we go through the applications and we narrow down, then does the interview process start pretty quickly after that?
Yes, it can start as soon as you notify the candidates that you want to interview.
So that is why we need to have the questions ready to go.
Do it in public.
Now, say that again, just say it.
Okay. If we do our questions, design them in public, your candidates would know in advance the questions
That
that
was
you're
going to be
going to
that's one of the questions I was going to ask.
Okay, well,
That's a
yes.
good point.
So it needs to be executive.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's
So,
no reason why we can't have it in an executive session.
Mr.
is there?
Cross, help
No.
us with this.
I can help you to some degree.
Unfortunately, I don't know that that's
a permissible topic for an executive session per se, but you may be able to assign.
I would just say this, when the university team is working with the board in the process and going through the process, they will work and take you through the question design as well.
And that would be
because
appropriate.
because it ties in at that time.
Okay.
You will have you need data to design your questions, but they will take you through that.
Okay, so if we have the data, then we can go into that
Yes.
meeting and
Yes.
prepare the.
And they help you to think about how to, that's part of the training that they're doing that day.
Because that's an all-day meeting anyway, right?
Yeah.
It is an all-day meeting.
And they take plenty of time and take all day if you want it, yes.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
so that was my confusion. So, okay, well, so we don't need to have a special meeting, and thanks for guiding us here. And so we will just wait to receive the information and have that all compiled, ready to go on March the 4th.
You can use it then.
And use it then.
But there's no
She
reason
can
wh-
still send us the information.
And there's no reason why we can't draft our own individual questions and throw those.
Right, and I mean, there's been lots of good questions that have come from our forums. So, you know, I think that it will be pretty easy to do. We'll probably have a lot more questions than what we'll have time to ask in the interviews,
We're
so.
already seeing the themes. I mean, that's.
Exactly. There are definite themes within the questions that are being suggested, so as long as we touch on that's what would be important, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks. So, ready?
We're ready to move to an update on the Success Committee, and I think that's Dixie.
Okay. We met on Tuesday, February 3rd, and we spent a little time reviewing what the Success Committee did last year, and a lot of that was centered around board meetings, and so we already know what we've done on that. We also discussed problems or concerns with the videos that we're having at our board meetings now, and the only concerns that centered on that was student schedules, having students prepared, because you have to remember the radio TV class is a preparation class, training kids to get ready. So it's a matter of having students who are ready to do this kind of work and who have the schedules to be able to do it. So we're still working on that, but as you can see, the videos just keep getting better and better all the time. So we also, looking forward, talked about how we would like to continue to tell our positive stories about Richmond Community Schools, and we discussed ways that we could do that. And some of the things that we talked about were board members possibly going out to community groups with a PowerPoint or talking points to talk to the groups about the things that are actually taking place and going on in Richmond Community Schools. We also talked about bringing groups into the schools to actually see what's going on, to dispel rumors, things that get started that aren't necessarily true. If you get them inside and see some of the wonderful things that's going on, it makes a positive impact. For example, inviting certain groups to like our high school plays, our high school musicals, just meeting in the high school and the Career Center, to maybe taking tours, things like that. Also, we talked about testimonies from students and parents. They're very powerful. And so we're, kind of throwing that around a little bit. So it's a matter of we need to meet once again, firm up some of our ideas, bring them back to the board, and we'll move from there.
Anybody have any questions or comments? Okay. We are ready for our work session.
Work session, and following the work session, our last board meeting, and that focused on our wants and needs from our transportation services. So I guess we're ready to continue that discussion now and maybe move it ahead a bit and discuss those safety needs and the criteria for decision-making that we need to use and ultimately determining what we are going to require in from our transportation.
And I just want to remind us that we're not into problem solving. We are into establishing criteria from the board level in which we want our transportation to happen, I guess. So I would like to suggest that you all have our a list of our brainstorming from our meeting a couple weeks ago. And we started out by, first of all, it ended up that we discussed the safety of our students. And so I would like for you to kind of look through those different points that we made concerning our safety. We also have brought up our policy on transporting our students and the distance. Right now, that is suggested, it is suggested that if an elementary student can walk 0.4 tenths of a mile, our intermediate students can walk 0.7 tenths of a mile, and our high school students can walk 1.5 miles to school. And so we need to think about our the safety issues that we listed here and think about what kind of a guideline we want to follow as far as the safety of our students, our walking students, and our transported students. So what is your thinking? About that criteria? I mean, is there criteria here that you all feel strongly about, that we need to ensure that that we make that a part of what we are doing? Suzanne.
I want to point out, again, just in case, current practice is not these distances. I don't know how that happened, and I don't know whose decision it was, but current practice is actually 0.2 for elementary, 0.4 for middle and high school.
But the same for the high, or 0.4 for the high school.
Correct.
Well, and I think that's what we have to,
Yeah, I just want
that
to,
when we formulate board policy, then we have to make sure that board policy is being followed.
Could I just ask a clarifying question? Is it that you have to be within those distances of a bus stop or within those distances of the school?
school, stop or school. Okay. So you, basically, the practice is if you live within if there is a stop within those distances from your home, that's acceptable. If you live within those distances from the school, then you're considered a walker. Of course.
But our policy says from the school, it doesn't say from it.
Right, it says from the school.
And it also gives exceptions.
Right.
So it does. There's this, the number D gives exceptions to the policy. And that is if they're subjected to extreme safety hazards when walking to school, if there's such hazards that include railroad crossings, state highways, lack of sidewalks, major traffic intersections, or where there are no traffic guards, and or other threatening conditions.
And that
That's
is
the
all
exception.
the current practice as well.
That's number D.
So maybe we need to talk about how do we ensure that we meet the needs of each and every student safety-wise? What is our belief?
Well,
What do we want to shoot for?
I do have some ideas in answer to that question, but I had another question as well. I think we all got an email from Dr. Poindexter about the safe route, is it called Safe Routes to School?
Yes.
Meeting? And I was wondering if anyone from Richmond would be attending that meeting tomorrow. Anybody?
When did that email go out?
Today. Well, my question is,
It just came in.
did you read it as, is it a new grant opportunity?
I believe the way that I understood it is that if you were interested in finding out more about this grant possibility, go to the meeting
Right.
and get the information and see whether it fits your community's needs.
It just arrived at my desk today, and I sent it on.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody can be freed up so quickly to go, because I believe the meeting is tomorrow somewhere in Indianapolis. But it might really be worth it might be a good thing for us to at least find out more about it.
And I wonder if this is the only meeting they're going to have.
Well,
I
I
would think
believe,
with technology, why couldn't
There's
they?
a potential.
Oh, there's a webinar.
yes,
It's a webinar.
and I believe that the timeline for the grant application, though, I believe, if I read it correctly, was
Pretty short.
the end of March.
There's actually a call-in number for the meeting tomorrow, too, so that's a possibility.
It's a federal grant.
So it sounds like it
That's,
is a webinar.
It's a webinar.
that's through the
Why
state.
couldn't
There's a second webinar on February 25th at 2 o'clock. That's a webinar. This is actually a call-in for the meeting tomorrow, and then there's a
So
webinar.
someone could participate from their desk then.
Right.
That's pretty doable.
And I don't know if that's something you
We can do that.
Okay, so we will,
So
we
who's,
need to research that.
well, who's going to do it?
Well,
Well, certainly Rob will from here, and maybe some others, but anyone else that can would be good.
But I just know, I know a little bit about the program because I have a family member who has helped schools to develop these programs. And it's been real productive for the schools that have participated. And so
it sounds like,
comes recommended.
in my limited reading about it, it seems as though that it would take some organization and some time to develop it.
Sure.
That's what I kind of took from it.
If I can just add, the City of Richmond, through the Planning Office, Community Development Planning Office, has been working on a plan to make our community walkable. There's just some extensive work being done in that area. And we do have a voice at that table. There was a meeting today about that. I think it ties into what we're talking about. And so I know that's happening, and so I would want to make sure whatever we do, we tie into the master plan the city's working on.
One of the things that this grant does provide is, once you've done the legwork to apply for the grant, part of what the grant supplies is engineering resources to come in and figure out what needs to be done at different intersections and to make things safer for kids as they're walking or biking.
So is that one of the things that the city, I mean, are they considering that kind of?
They, and maybe some of you have received a link to a survey. There's been people pushing surveys around for that. And at their meeting today, Bridget Hazelbaker was a representative there today, and they've received over 300 people that have responded to that survey. And they took some of that information today and started kind of plotting exactly what we're talking about. Intersections, where do we want that? And it's also about biking. If you're riding a bicycle, what does that need to look like and be more safe? And so that's those. Now, how far along they're going to get into reality and budgeting and all that, but I do think this could tie in from a funding standpoint, could tie in really well.
Well, I think, I mean, the grant's great and all of that, but I think
It's not an immediate fix.
Yeah, it's not an immediate fix. I think from a safety point of view, as we develop the board policy, we have to develop the board policy from a safety point of view, from worst case scenario. You know, walking 3/4 of a mile to school, or even a ninth grader walking a mile and a half to school, that's a lot different if you're walking in rain and snow that hasn't been plowed off the sidewalks. I mean, if it's a 80-degree day and it's light out, you're going to have a whole different concept of what's safe for that child. Our school starts most of the school year, it seems, in the dark. Yeah. So here's the question that I would ask that we would have to, from a parent's point of view, whether you're elementary, intermediate to 5 through 8.
Yes.
What kind of conditions do you want your child walking to school in? You have to assume that they don't have the means to take the child to school.
Right.
You have to make that assumption. We have the exceptions listed in our policy. Major roads, okay? Is Hub Etchison a major road?
Doesn't have sidewalks.
Well,
no, Hub does.
Hub
That's
does.
Sim, I was thinking of Sim.
But so that policy immediately is going to be superseded if Hub Etchison itself is 40 and 27 the only major roads. Is Northwest Fifth a major road? The 4-lane 2. I mean, so I guess from our perspective.
L Street.
Well, from our perspective is I think we need to draft the policy in what I call worst case scenario.
I think from our discussions here, this is anecdotal data, but I just heard the discussion that students, when it's raining or snowing, if in fact when they did walk and if they're walking, they usually will not arrive on time. They usually will miss a couple periods in the morning before they will be there.
Well, I wouldn't want to
Or
walk
maybe
to
not
school
even
and get
go.
wet.
Yeah, some would, for the most part, they would try to be there by noon. But
Well, and
definitely.
that's my concern when we talk about bus stops, walking bus stops. So that means that child has to get there in enough time. The bus is going to have, I don't know what the fluctuation of arrival is, but I would expect at least 10
5
minutes.
minutes before, 5 minutes after
Yeah,
is
so
our general
like
rule.
10 minutes is a general rule, and I'm sure that they can't hit that 100% of the time.
Most try to be tighter than that, but
So if we're standing out at a bus stop, still a half a mile from school, and it's raining,
So, Kelly?
So, are we having problems with safety at the current time? I mean, we're not bringing this up because we're having problems with safety, right?
No, I don't think so.
setting some priorities.
In terms of,
We're trying to set some criteria, some priorities, so that will then guide
right.
our contract negotiations and so forth.
It's hard to put together a plan without knowing exactly, I mean, we can have a wish list, but we also have to be able to fund that wish list, And of course, safety would be the number one priority, but when you make cuts.
Well, I think, I was just sitting here thinking that, because we're trying to establish some criteria and some priorities. So, is our priority transporting our kids to and from school? Would you say that is our number one priority?
Safely.
Safely. Is that our number one priority?
that's the
So,
right
Has to be. I think that we have established then one of the criterias that we work from is that our number one priority, we don't know yet what the board policy might look like, but what we do know is that we want to ensure that our students are transported to and from school safely.
Let me ask this question, and I've had this question since the beginning, and I'm not quite sure how to phrase it, but what you said it's their right. I just heard you say that. It's the student's right. What is the student's right as far as transportation goes? What are we responsible for legally?
Not a right.
What we decide through our policy.
It's a right, it's a right because it's board policy.
But it's a privilege, right?
Right.
Right.
Our
So-
board policy says we will provide free transportation to the students in our district. That's in our policy.
Right. But,
So-
I mean legally, that's our policy, but as far as the state goes, do they have, there are no parameters? I mean, we don't have to have busing at all is my,
We have to provide busing. We set the parameters for the transportation zones, or no transportation zones, like Mrs. Daragowski said. Within a certain limit, we don't necessarily have to do that based on the board policy, so we do have to provide free transportation to students. We cannot charge them for to and from school, so.
and
The
how
the
are,
other things, we would not have to. We're not mandated to do the other things, but to and from. That's a recent case that came out of Franklin Township when they decided that they would not bus the students because they didn't have dollars.
Right.
That was, what, about 5 years ago?
well, that's where I was going with that, because I know, and that might be over in Ohio, I know some school systems don't bus anymore. I think that is over in
Probably is in
Ohio.
Ohio.
But in Indiana, that's not the case then.
And there might be, well, there actually, I'm not sure in Speedway, in some districts, the town is small and most of the students can walk for the most part, so you wouldn't have to if they
Right.
were able to
I
walk, and it was
understand
walking
that.
distance, yeah.
Well, we have some kind of obligation because we tax the residents for that transportation. And they actually pay a tax.
If we didn't provide the transportation, we wouldn't tax them.
That's true. We don't have to buy buses either, so there's another taxing fund that's gone.
Okay.
Well, while you're on safety, because we're board members, and I think this is also a conversation someplace along the road that we need to have also with the police department and the sheriff's department and the people who actually know the safety issues on streets and roads in our community.
You probably need to get that information gathered.
What particular would you like to?
Well, like accident-prone areas, busy street, I mean, they know which streets are all that kind of thing.
That would be easy to get. It wouldn't take that much.
Most of those are currently avoided now. Like,
Mhm.
the bus stops are created specifically to avoid National Road, specifically to avoid, we don't have students walk across Main Street and National Road, even though it's within the walking boundary for some kids. We don't have them cross 4-lane roads, Chester Boulevard. Those already exist in the current practice. So much of that is already exists. But if there aren't sidewalks, for example, those are generally door-to-door stops on those sort of fringe streets that could be within walking distance, but there isn't a sidewalk. Some exceptions might be a cul-de-sac where it's a very low-traffic street. Even though it doesn't have a sidewalk, it's still safe for the student to walk to the corner, for example, because it's really not safe for the bus to try to turn around
I would suspect
in
you
a
have some
cul-de-sac.
software, you have some programs
We do.
already that pull that out for you?
Well, what we do is we actually set those streets as not as no zones, no crossing zones, and so we pinpoint those dangerous spots. And even though it's designed to put a student at a stop that's within 2 blocks, if it requires them to cross that street, then it would not place them at that stop. So there's a lot of that that's already in place for a lot of those hazardous situations that you're talking about. So.
Well, and, like I said, if you have it, that's fine, but I didn't know if stuff needed to be updated. It's like the new construction on East Street, which is a very busy street. L Street's a very busy street. They're not highways, but where the congestion is.
Aaron?
Have we had the discussion, we possibly have, in regards to the effect of the time change on not only the safety issue, but the number of students that are actually utilizing our bus routes as opposed to to those who have decided not to or can't use it as a result of the time change.
What do you mean can't use it?
Well, I say can't use.
You mean don't use it because?
Don't use it because of.
It being dark?
Uh-huh.
And parents just don't want their students?
The question is.
Be purely anecdotal. We've never done a survey.
My question would be specifically is if, when the time changes, if we were to maybe change the day calendar back an hour or so. Yeah, I'm throwing this out there.
Sorry. I know we're just brainstorming.
I'm brainstorming. I'm just throwing the question out.
I hear murmurs.
We could go to the
But
central
the reality
time
of it is if when we go to, when state time changes, if we moved our calendar back an hour, we possibly eliminate the issue of what a lot of parents have of walking a child to a bus stop when it's dark, because now you've got an additional hour. That creates maybe a little better safety factor right there. Also, some of those parents who cannot have their student on time at the bus route at that hour may be able at that point to make the arrangements to be there on time with the student. That was a question.
It'll create some other.
Parents' work schedules.
Yes.
Because they remain.
And at
Your
the end
employers don't move their
No,
clocks.
they don't move their clocks.
And at the end of the day, it would cause some issues.
There is, but at the flip side of that, there are also parents who are getting off at that time that right now who can't do that because of their work schedule.
Yeah.
It was just a question to throw out there.
Thanks, we will take that under advisement. No, it's a legitimate question.
Absolutely.
I mean,
The daylight is an issue. No
because
question.
we deal with it, and we're going to be dealing with it again here real soon when the time changes again.
The elementary kids get out at 2:30.
2:40.
Yeah, so it's not, to me, it's not unfathomable to move the starting time to 9 o'clock and they get out at 3:30. Most businesses work till 5, so.
And can we switch the older kids earlier then? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, I'm just, I'm
No
just-
problem solving right now. Kelly.
I'm just wondering, since Suzanne does this full time, if she, we don't ride the buses and we don't drive the buses, and she lives with the buses.
I
all
would like
day
to
long.
invite you all to do that sometime, though.
But I guess I'm thinking that she would be the one, or Sadra would be the one, or Rob would be the one, since you're the head of, that would be able to make suggestions as far as where we need to cut to be able to afford to keep the things that we feel are priorities.
Yeah, I really like, though, the idea of saying what are the no touch.
Because that
items.
then gives you the guidelines that you need.
So like you said, to and from school,
Exactly.
no brainer, has to happen, that can't go anywhere.
So
Be very helpful.
we're not, the board is not going to suggest that this be cut or that be cut. All that we're doing is we are setting the criteria. And then if it is involving programs, that goes to the administration. And administration has to look at our programs in relationship to the cost.
Right.
And what it's costing our transportation, for our transportation, and so on and so forth. Does that make sense, Dr. Poindexter, that we are only setting some criteria here so that we have direction?
So then moving forward, one of the next things would be some of the middle day things.
Exactly.
Because you've just said, our
Right.
priority is to do to school, from school. So then the
That's
next
what-
piece would be some of the things we do in the middle of the, let's
All
start
day
with to
long.
and from school first. There's some other things we as a school corporation do. We take students, we transfer students we have magnet schools.
That's a question that we need to
Right?
discuss.
So we shuttle students from all over town to the magnet schools of Star Hibbard. Okay?
And so, is that something that this board feels that the administration should do some research on? And
Well, we've talked about safety as our number one, and I think our number two has to be efficiency. And we have some areas that we need to look at as far as efficiency is concerned. So those two items, I think, are...
So throw out some efficiency things. I'm going to start with when students miss buses midday, and the bus drivers go back and pick them up. To me, that's an efficiency that definitely needs to be looked into and to find a solution to. Anybody disagree with me on that one? Okay, so that is an efficiency that needs to be looked at.
And we talked...
Rob? I'm sorry, Dixie.
Oh, I'm sorry.
In many respects, that's not a transportation issue. That is a release issue in the classroom or in the school itself.
But it becomes a transportation issue.
I'm looking at the bus drivers back there. It affects them because you're right. They're on time to pick up the kids, and maybe someone's not released efficiently out of the classroom for transportation. But it really is not a transportation issue, but it does affect them.
It's not something that you are initiating.
No, but it would be
But
something
you are
tighten up.
picking up the pieces.
Right. We feel the effect of it, and so does that student, and so does other students.
Well,
as they don't get to their class on
and
time.
then, in turn, it costs money.
It costs money, right, so.
One other thing, just to see if this would be something we could work on, there might just be some minor tweaking of some boundaries. Not big, but just some minor tweaking. That could definitely save us some money in where students live.
No, because I see buses leaving that have sometimes just a few kids on them, and I know they're probably going out to those outlying areas, so, because there's not that many kids that...
Well, and the other thing that happens
live there.
even in town is students don't ride every day of the week, and so, but that doesn't change the fact that you have to go to every stop, because we don't know what days they're riding. So you may go and drive a whole route and end up with half a bus today, and on Friday when it's raining, like you said, it's a full bus because everyone rides that day. So.
I guess I would like to have the programs that we provide transportation to and from midday. I would like to have those programs reviewed by the administration.
Well, you're looking at ESA, you're looking at athletics, you're looking at wings.
There's not many midday athletics. There's mostly
wings,
clubs,
and after-school tutoring clubs and detention.
Are field trips totally separate?
Tennis,
Yes.
test
Hibbard,
shuttles.
the Hibbard
yeah, the music. We do music and
Music and
math.
math.
music and math classes.
Wings is one.
Those are efficiencies that need to be looked at program-wise.
Career education at the high school. We transport students to Ivy Tech, to fire and rescue, child care.
I think one of the things that's happened, we have added programs, and as we added programs, we added a lot of, we added to the transportation, and so, yeah, that's a great program, let's do it. And so,
Provide transportation with it,
and
too.
exactly, and
Well, and
so
there-
it's just kind of gotten out of control.
The numbers on career ed are a really good example. We provide that transportation, but sometimes the students transport themselves. And most days, that could probably capacity-wise be done by one bus, but because they're in many different locations and they want to maximize their time on their task, you can't, in the time allotted, you can't do it with one, even though the space in the bus, to be efficient, should do one bus, but if you did, they would get cheated out of time in their classroom. So there's that stuff.
So, Susie?
Well, we might need to look a little bit at how we provide some of these classes and
Yes.
programs, because it would seem to me that it's a lot simpler for an adult to travel to a site and meet with students than to have, and I mean, than to have a bunch of students transported to a site to meet with the adult. And so I recognize that sometimes it's about the resources that are available at a particular location, but maybe we need to at least look at that a little bit and see whether there are some times when it makes more sense for the adult to move to the students as opposed to the students to move to the adult.
We can definitely do that.
Yeah, I think when you look at,
Yes.
hopefully, when you look at all the programs that, where transportation is provided midday, whether it's a shuttle or whether it's whatever.
Field trips.
Yeah, that you will take all of those things in consideration that are being affected in order to hopefully be a lot more efficient. And maybe, because, I mean, we're obviously we have to be in a cost-cutting mode because of our budget anyway. So I think not only are we looking in terms of transportation, but we're looking in terms of general fund and...
Absolutely.
And perhaps it's a discussion that can be opened up to a larger group of people. Lots of times, that lunch table conversation can be rich sometimes when people think, oh, well, maybe you could try it this way, and, you know.
Aaron?
Well, I think the partnerships that we have that are aided by our transportation efforts goes in line with not only our mission statement, our vision statement, but also with what makes us the most viable educational option here. You know, the things that we are able to provide, the opportunities, whether it be during the day or after school, that makes this so important. And I would hope that, you know, through the guidance of the administration, that with finding out how to trim and create more efficient transportation opportunities, we don't necessarily have to cut a lot of those programs, because again, there are a lot of people who will choose Richmond Community Schools because of these opportunities. And I certainly hope that in being frugal, which we are going to be, that it doesn't also sever an artery that has been, you know, basically a life flow.
I think you make a really good point, Aaron. I just think that I would hate for us to cut out one of our programs but it might be good to also look at the attendance in those programs at the same time that we're examining this.
Well, I don't think efficiencies...
Participation.
Efficiencies, that doesn't necessarily mean cutting.
Right.
It means tightening up, maybe changing. Maybe evaluating the program. Maybe the program isn't doing exactly what we think it ought to do. So, I mean, I think there's lots of things involved in looking for efficiencies, but not necessarily cutting
it.
I mean,
Well, and I also think as we've added the programs, we've been very accommodating to make sure that our kids got everything they could possibly get. But as you add on, you don't always look at the efficient way to do it. You're just adding on. So when I was talking about efficiencies, that means backing up, still providing the same services, but you may provide them in a different way that is more efficient and is cost-saving. That's
Jeff?
Well, the criteria, it all goes back to the board policy to me. I mean, it really all goes back to the board policy, whether we have one or two or three. Because I think what we've lacked is we've had board policy that hasn't been interpreted for whatever reason. I'm not putting blame anywhere. But that's when we go to the administration. The administration has got to have guidelines that mirror our policies, and those guidelines have got to be distributed through the building principals, to the director of transportation, down to so Sodrel knows what they're providing for us. Because in the end, when we go back to Sodrel and say, we would like for you to stay a partner with us, but in order for you to do that, you need to, your contract needs to change to the amount of tax we collect in our levy, not the full transportation levy cost. And in order for Sodrel to be able to give us the price to be able to do that, they got to have guidelines that are developed by us so they can give us a cost. I mean, to me, it's that simple. It's our fault.
Right, and one of the policies, for example, that we did with all the right intentions when we closed school buildings was to set the caps for classroom, right? That's costing us some serious dollars in transportation, because as soon as a cap is met and there's a student who lives near a school but there's no room for them, you're transporting them now across town. Because, and in many cases, not just to the neighboring district, but to one on the west side, because that's the one who has space, which we knew that was a possibility, but that gets expensive to do that.
We also have, if a school is an F, the parent also has the right to transfer that student all the way across town too, so that's a consideration.
And one of the things that I've said before too about enrollment, one of our enrollment policies, we talk about that, transportation availability, and the movement that happens because of overcrowding. I think this is probably more of a practice than a policy, but I've often asked, do we reset those students back to their home school where they live in the following year? And I think, in fact, we do make that as an opportunity for them to go back, but we haven't said, if you decide to stay at the one across town, we can't transport you anymore.
Well,
and we
so
could
that
do
probably, we probably need to look at that, but, and we probably need to have a discussion on policy 5120 and think about it in terms of not just transportation, but think of it in terms of, what is, what's good about that policy, what may need to be tweaked about that policy, how is it being implemented? And because if you remember, when we set that policy, it was because our class sizes were they were lopsided. We would have 15 in one class, and we would have 30 in another.
Also because Westview was packed, and guess where most of the capacity is right now?
Westview. Yeah, and so we set targets, and then hopefully the schools would use the targets for the beginning of the year, but I think what has happened is that many times at the beginning of the year, caps are already met, not leaving any space.
Or exceeded.
Well, and you know why? I mean, I can tell you why. Because if a student walks in, a parent and a student walk in, and they want to come to this school, and they say, no, I really want to come here as a transfer, and if I don't, I'm going to go pick another school. Are we ready to let them go to another district?
Well, I think that that's why we have to look at it so parents don't like oversized classrooms either.
No, you're right.
And so, we just have to find a balance. As I looked at the information that was provided, I think that there, as of right now, there are maybe 18 students, 15 or 18 students. That's really less than 1% of our elementary population. So, I mean, it's not horrible, but I think that we do need to look at it and look at that policy, and if we can tweak it in any way, then, then.
But how are we going to analyze that at this level? Because you're going to have to really get into it at a fairly detailed level, because I would argue, if caps is a problem, I would argue, well, just like Suzanne just said, if a student isn't going back, if a cap is full and we've got 21 students in the class, I would say, are 10 of those already transfer students from outside of the district?
That's another.
I mean,
Right.
So
Well, and then the
some
reality
of it we
is,
may create ourselves.
the reality is too, if we turn that student down today, or if the student moves in across the street from Star and they're full, but they don't take them, so we decide to transport them across town. 2 weeks from today, there's going to be a space for that student.
Well, and I was thinking, I was trying to look for that policy and the guidelines,
Right.
because I thought, I remember Dr. Borff talking about making the administrative guidelines so that if a student did come, it would be at the principal's discretion.
It is there, isn't it?
The superintendent has to approve going over the cap.
Mhm.
And we've done
Or
that.
designate.
We've done that. In instances, you know, you were a teacher, 27 children may be a disaster of a class, or it may be a perfect class. It depends on the makeup of the class. And
Absolutely.
so the principal takes that into account. We've had teachers say, I want to keep this child, I want this child. So we've definitely got some over the caps.
Well, and we've had cases where the student moves out of, say, Fairview's district into Vale, but Vale's full. So rather than transfer them to some third school, Fairview has said, can we just keep them? Because
But
they're
again,
already here.
The principal
And-
has the discretion
Right.
to recommend that
But
student.
that's where that student now needs to be transported across town, because
That's a
of course that's the
huge
best
inefficiency.
solution for that student. It would not be a good solution to, they move next to Vale, but they don't have room, so we're going to transfer them to Westview. So of course the best thing to do is to leave them at Fairview, but now they have to be transported.
But that's interesting because we made a conscious decision that we wanted to ensure that that student, if they moved, could stay in the
Right.
same building. So,
But the parent was going to move them.
right, but I mean, we consciously said as a board, we
Right.
want to incur the extra transportation to stop that kid from moving from school to school.
But
to
I would
school.
say that's where some of the big inefficiencies are,
That has
right there.
become a big inefficiency.
Now, the resetting is probably where we're having
Even
a
the
problem.
DOE guidelines say that if you move out of a school district, and the principal will agree to keep your child, that you can.
It's the end of year reset that I think is really important. Like, doing all that is fine, but then, especially those where they are forced out because of size, I do think it would really help the district to do that reset, so that you're not starting with this web of, since we're talking about transportation, this web of transportation right away at the beginning of the year. So I have another comment about, too, we talked about our number one priority is getting the students safely and then efficiently to and from school. Another conversation that I would like to sort of hear is the expectation of the level of service. Again, you set, like, how much going back and getting a student who's not at the stop at the time they need to be back at the stop. That is expensive as well. It's, if a student's behavior does not, is not conducive to riding a bus, but we really need them at school, and if they don't get a bus, they don't get to school. Those are some things at the board level that I think student transit would need to know, because those are some inefficiencies that are pretty expensive at all levels, including special needs transportation. The expectation is, if there isn't someone to receive that student off the bus, well, they'll just go around the block and they'll come back again.
Can I ask a stupid question since you brought up special needs?
Mhm.
I know one of the questions that Rob responded to with an answer of special needs doesn't really pay much for our transportation unless it's a lift or an IEP driven. I mean, if we have a special needs students, are we missing a boat tapping into special education to fund some of our
I
transportation?
do not believe so, but that's not something I'm an expert at. There's no additional dollars.
There are not additional dollars. If we had to do that, we would have to sacrifice something else in the special education department, whether that would be general fund or grant dollars. It would be a give or a take, because there's not extra anywhere in the special education service area right now.
Well,
could
that's
that
not
be
extra
looked
in the
at
transportation
absolutely
either.
like everything else? But, well, right, I mean, but it's a give and a take on all of it.
Right.
And so that's where, if we decided to go with that thought, that's just something we would have to understand, that there will be services that aren't provided in another area.
But
or-
there are no additional dollars out there
Right.
at the state or
No.
federal level that we aren't getting for special needs students. The only thing that we have had is minimal examples of if a student had an extreme IEP that took us out of town. There might be some reimbursement that happens, but
I
that's.
think, Barb, you want to comment?
Good question.
The grant money that I do get, 2 different grants, and basically, you know, working with Karen very closely, is basically goes for my teachers, for our teachers, our special ed teachers, their salaries and their benefits, and then we also look at some of our paraprofessionals that we pay also for them. So by the time we do all that, and you know, we are not a self-sufficient department either, so we also go for the general fund for helping us with the rest of our department costs. But transportation has never been anything other than I do take money out of the grant to pay for our teachers that travel, that are itinerant through the district. So we pay for that, but that's about it.
So even the bus aids that are required for the IEP students are funded out of transportation or general fund? one of
Yes,
those
unless some students that have exact one-to-one services are paid through special education funds, and as Suzanne said before, we do get some reimbursement on rare cases that are kind of a little bit more excessive in cost. But the IEPs are written very specifically in those cases, so they are not always funded from special education in that.
Now, one of the things we have in the realm of efficiencies for those middle, like if an IEP is written where a student needs to leave school in the middle of the day, one of the things Barb and I have been working on, we're not quite where we want to be yet, but as those IEPs are being written, if the student is to leave after 1 o'clock or whatever, and then the next student's IEP is written that the student needs to leave after 1:15, we might consult with the instructors, the teachers of record, and those that are writing the IEP and say, hey, we already have a bus leaving at 1 o'clock. Is there any way to sort of meet in the middle so we can use the same transportation for those 2 students versus having 2 buses for 1 student each?
The times aren't written in the IEPs, the times are written on the transportation sheet. So that's kind of where we tried to work with the principals and say, if you have 3 children that are leaving in the middle of the day, let's try to make them leave all at the same time, before lunch or after lunch, something like that. But we have several of our students with IEPs that ride the regular buses. We don't have everybody that has door-to-door transportation. The students that have door-to-door transportation are students that really need to have that due to either
A
their
wheelchair.
disability or safe, when you're talking about safety. So, but I would say, I don't know, maybe at least 90% of our kids ride regular buses.
And that was a question that, Linda, you had posted about to all of our special ed, right on us. No, they're part of the regular classrooms and buses, so.
But another level of service question might be, for example, one of the things that happens on a daily basis is students needing to go to different addresses. And so, in fact,
You mean like split custody or something?
yes, but sometimes it's on a temporary basis.
Or childcare.
Right. And so,
So that's something that is beyond a T10, it's like an emergency situation.
yes. And so there's that, or even the T10 is 1 week here, 1 week there, 1 week here, 1 week there. Well, obviously that's difficult to be efficient with because so, and I can't quantify that at this moment, but I'm sure we could.
And so sometimes do they have to switch even bus number?
Yes. So there's some of that changes the cost of transporting them, obviously. We have an instance today with a student who, for 2 weeks, is actually going to be, because of where he is and the transfers and all, is actually going to ride 4 buses for 2 weeks.
It's a lot of pressure on the bus drivers, too, to
keep track of all.
Right.
Exactly. So
So when you talk about expectation of level of service, is what you're after is perhaps either board policy or administrative guideline that would cover that. If you miss a bus, then, sorry.
We're with, and is your,
know,
and in the
or-
end, it's really the parents' responsibility to get the students to and from school. I mean, that really is. Now, we provide that service for that to happen, if the student misses the bus. And again, obviously, student transit wants to get kids to and from school. That's the whole point of it. But at some point, as a school district, those kinds of things are very expensive. To send a bus driver back out, a whole bus and a driver back out to get a student who's missed the bus. Now, on the other end of that, student transit would need to be able to ensure that they're stopping at the regular time within reasonable parameters, obviously, so that the parents could be regularly at the stop. But students with special needs is one that we've talked about. Many times, it takes a very long time for those students to load. And so if parents aren't ready, if they're just getting the child dressed at the time that the bus is arriving, that's difficult to be efficient in that case. And so while I know that's a sensitive issue, I think as a district, we need to come up with what
We have to have expectations.
Exactly. And communicate them well, but stick to them, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, because those kinds of things happen every day, and they're very expensive.
Okay.
Let me ask a question as far as dropping off an elementary student at a home address at the end of the day and the parent's not home. The child gets back on the bus?
K1.
Kindergartners and first graders are not allowed off the bus without an adult to receive them. Students in the grades higher than that are allowed off at the stop without anyone to greet them. However, students, our drivers, especially students that maybe live in a rural area, our drivers understand that if ever the student feels like it is not safe for them to get off their bus, they are allowed to keep them on the bus, and we'll figure out how to get them where they need to go in a safe manner.
Do we have a lot of cost, I guess, and then taking them back and redelivering them at home, or do we take them
We do
to a
not
simple-
redeliver them. What we have been doing is following the same policy that we follow when kindergarten and first grade students aren't met. So we would return them to their school, and then the parents would be contacted to come and retrieve them from school. So.
Which also creates a problem at the school, because it also means that
Somebody's got to watch them.
Someone has
somebody's
to
got
stay
to
late.
watch them, and so I was sitting here with the idea of library fine going through my head. When you have an overdue book, you have a library fine. Maybe if you're overdue at a bus stop or overdue, you create a situation where your child needs additional support. Maybe there's a transportation fine. I don't know. I have no idea whether that's even legal, but it seems to me that
We've
that's
talked
a
about,
parental responsibility, and maybe
suspending
that puts it in a context that would be meaningful to people.
There is guidelines there where we can suspend a student from a bus for a certain period of time because of behavior or other activities. So, but there again, you're kind of limited because you want that kid to be in school.
Right.
So, and just going back to what Suzanne has talked about, these guys, I'm pointing to the bus drivers, they will sit and wait. If they think there's activity going on in the house, they'll wait till those students come out. It might be a 2-minute, 3-minute wait. If you add that up times several stops, and maybe a little traffic congestion in some places, you're behind schedule a little bit. Also, if somebody doesn't come out, and then they call the bus department, they might send somebody else out there to pick them up, or say, hey, as you're going by there, another bus route might pick them up. There's a lot of sharing of that going on, but we really don't have that. We want to get the students to school, and we don't have a lot of punishment, involved with that.
Right. Well, I guess the
So,
point
but
I'm trying to make is that for sure, we want the kids at school.
Right.
That's where they need to be for us to educate them. But at the same time, are we enabling people's bad habits?
We do.
And how do we, maybe there's a way we can deal with that.
Well, I think we have to set expectations, and we have to expect our parents to meet up to those
And
expectations.
stick to them that's the issue, I think.
And if, if it gets to the point where the students are not in school, then that's negligence. And, we have an avenue for when there is negligence also. And so, I think, you can almost say, well, one mistake, being late or whatever. But then if we had 300 kids that happened to, that affects everything that we do. So it just seems as though that we are going to have to set
A trip back to school or a trip back to a house affects everyone. And in the case of us, where we have a dual route system, if it happens on the elementary route, now it's also affected a whole bus full of secondary students as well, because there is no wiggle room between those two sets of
I think one of my questions that I asked was if somebody misses the bus at Crestdale and is going to Hibbard, how much does that cost? You see, I don't know. I know that I had to take a taxi this week because I locked my keys in my car. I had to take it from South 2nd to South 22nd, and it cost me a round trip $17. I know that.
Give us an example of a situation where you had a lengthy route and you had to rerun it. What would that be?
Well, there was actually a good example, which we did not rerun it, but there was a request. A student lives out in the Boston area. Middle school student said, I'm locked out of the house, there's no one here, and I don't have my key. We brought the student back in to test, and the parent asked if we could bring them back, and we obviously didn't do that in that case. But if we had to, you're talking at least, well, first of all, there are other students on the bus, so you wouldn't want to keep them on the bus an additional length of time. So you're talking, what is it, 80, I think it was 86 cents a mile or something we figured was the average, 86 cents a mile. Well, all the way out to Boston and back would be pretty expensive.
Pretty expensive,
And does that
Well, how many
include the
miles is
cost?
that? 5, maybe?
Round trip would be 10.
Does that include the cost of the bus driver salary also?
That was all averaged in there, I believe,
So,
That seems high.
Karen had,
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of speak about Susie's question on fees. The board sets the fees for the corporation, and that would not be considered a transportation to and from school fee. So we could do some investigation, but if you did set up a parent expectation guideline and you did place the fee as a schedule in that area, then we would have the ability to charge that fee. If it's not set by the board, we can't do that, but it is available to us as an option should we decide to take that on.
Dixie, did you?
Well, I was just going back to the expectations, because as teachers, we are expected, I have to say we're expected to set expectations in our classrooms for our kids.
High expectations.
High expectations. And going back to what Susie said about enabling, the more we do this, the worse it gets. So I think we do have to go back to expectations from the board, from the transportation department. We have to stick to it. For a while, it might be a little messy, but after a while, people will get the message.
Well, the current situation was created.
And not to be hard-nosed, because we want our kids in school, but we can't accommodate every single thing that comes down the pike.
Those habits have been created
Yes.
in the best context possible. People are trying to be helpful. We want the students to be at school, but in the case, we had bus the other day that for whatever reason, the route is such that there's really one student in a special needs bus on the west side of town, and the rest of them are sort of on the north side of town, or east and north, or north and south, I guess. There was no one to receive the student, and they waited with all the other students on the bus, and finally decided they needed to move on. Went about, of course, the rest of the route is on the north side of town, and then the parent called and wanted them returned. And so now you've rerun that entire, and you create routes, obviously, from the garage to the school and from the school out. That's the most efficient way to run that. And so now you've just basically backtracked and done the entire thing over again. So,
well, and when you think about it, one of the things that's happening is because we are in a deficit with our transportation. And so when you think about the extra travel time and the cost of when somebody misses a bus or parents aren't home or whatever, then what we're doing is we're jeopardizing transportation for our other students also, because we can't continue to operate in a deficit. And
that's where we can address that, though. If we got in the habit of making them come pick that parent up, we'd change that habit eventually.
Yes.
And that's where
Like
our
I said, it was
policy and our
done
guidelines
within
come
the
in.
best reasons possible for taking care of students and being helpful.
And I would rather go towards the suspension of privileges before I went to a fine. I think a fine would be really hard to
Manage as a
manage, yes.
Well,
I think the
and-
fine I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was
6
just going to
people
say,
in
the other thing, too, is the stress that's put on our bus drivers. Bus driving is already, I think, probably one of the most stressful jobs in the world. And when you have to continually make these
look how happy they are, being stressed.
well,
Two of our best and
these
brightest.
off-the-cuff, quick
25 years
decisions about where should I leave this child, should I go back, should I do this, should I do that, with a whole busload of kids.
And we want our kids to always be safe.
We're doing them a disservice, and we want to keep our best bus drivers. And when you set up situations like this, that,
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the bus drivers, because you have been sitting here listening, and I would like to invite you to come to the podium if you wish, and you have anything that you would like, any insight that you would like to share with us, that you can share with us, please do. Tell us who you are, and
my name is Jamie Sabate. I work for Student Transit. I think a lot of it is the parents' responsibility to get their kids to the bus stop, to be there on time. When we tell them we'll be there at 3:15, don't be there at 3:45 because we're already gone. So we need to teach the parents as well as the kids to be there on time, because that costs money. You mentioned something about a fine. Nobody's going to pay a fine. How are you going to enforce that? Are you going to suspend the kids? You can, I'm sorry. So it is difficult, but it's doable. Prior to Student Transit, I worked for Galileo students. They're no longer in business. But we had a schedule. If I told a parent I'll be there at 3:15, I will be there at 3:15. If you were not there, you have to come and get your kid. And that was the end of the story.
expectations.
Expectation. The parents is your kid, be there when you're supposed to be at. So we need to teach the parents and educate them, because a lot of times we stop at a place on, oh, my mom is there, the car is there. I said, where's your mommy at? Oh, they must be sleeping. And we get that all the time. Mom is there, what are they doing? They're not coming to the door. Obviously, they're not paying attention because they relied on us taking them back.
Yeah. In the K-1s, we cannot.
We're not allowed to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, do you have any thing that you'd like to add?
Oh, no, I'm good, thank you.
Oh, okay. This is your opportunity. You may not get another one.
Okay, I won't listen.
I know,
See, I knew I could coax you up here.
I know you're talking about a fee, because I talked to Suzanne about that before.
Tell us your name.
Oh, I'm Jeff Nicholson.
Okay, Jeff, thank you.
The Boys and Girls Club, now, they charge a fee. Now, I mean, if they end their day at 5 o'clock, and if a parent is 15 minutes late, they charge that parent $5 or $10, I forget, every 15 minutes they charge. So, I mean, I know they do it. I don't know how well they get their money or anything.
Okay.
And about the same thing like Jamie says, I mean, about the parents not being at the stop. And there's things we have to deal with. Okay, I think
we understand that.
And I will say those are two, we have a lot of very efficient drivers. Those two are very efficient with their lists. They know, they are very tight on their time schedules. They do a
Well,
good job
thank
with
you.
that.
Thank you for being efficient and being those stellar bus drivers, because that's an important job. Rob?
Just clarification, our guidelines state that the parents should be informed they're responsible for having the child at the bus stop at least 5 minutes prior to the scheduled pickup time, which is what the bus drivers give them. One thing that Suzanne and I have talked about is we really need to, the bus is just an extension of the classroom. I think maybe Dixie and Susie had said that. And part of that is getting the bus drivers into those buildings at the beginning of the year maybe, and going through some things with the students and with the administrators to understand that from the time they're picked up to the time they get home, they're in the classroom. And we're all in this together, and it's not, okay, at the end of the day, you're out of the school, now it's transportation's business. But we've got some good buy-in from the elementary principals on up that they know that they've got to be there if there's a problem, but also talk to those parents and students if there's an issue. But I think it's real good that we're talking about this responsibility, because I think it's going to take your message to say, hey parents, you maybe help us out here. 2 minutes late, then that compounds everybody else. That kid's waiting there for 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes. So.
Okay, good. Thank you. Aaron?
What communication do we have with Sodrel with parents at the beginning of every year or at the end of every year? You talk about teachers, administrators, students, and everything else, but that key component is the parent, as Jamie had mentioned.
This past year, we actually did have drivers out at registration.
Which was wonderful.
And we will repeat that.
Made a huge difference.
Great idea.
And then what I'd like to extend too is the back-to-school nights. I'd like to get drivers out at back-to-school nights as well. Again, to be able to share with the parents their bus time, and communicate the rules. Jamie that spoke has something that he does himself. Each driver communicates maybe a little bit differently, but the driver's responsibility to call their parents at the beginning of the year and communicate their stop time and location. Jamie has an example of a flyer that he does, and we're going to work on making sure everybody has those at the beginning of the year and hands them out like the first week. This is my list of stops and times. This is my name. Here are the basic rules, especially the K-1 rules, because first-time parents, that's a new thing for them, so being able to communicate that. So we're going to replicate that as a best practice at the beginning of the year. The issue with that, of course, is that as soon as a new student is added, that changes the stops and times for a route. So keeping up with that is a little more complex. Now, the software that we have also has a parent component to it, and we're not there yet, but it's a portal where parents could go in and see where the bus stops are and times. And so I'm anxious to get to the point where we can do that. We haven't gotten far enough to be able to experiment with that yet. And then the other thing I'd like to recommend as communication goes, and I don't know if we use, because Richmond is so good at using social media in the right way, one of the things that we've talked about in the past is using social media, whether it's a second space for student transit or transportation, or if it's using the Richmond, if a bus, for whatever reason, there was a mechanical breakdown and they're 10+ minutes behind, if parents know that's where they can go to find that out, then we could send them there for that information. And we wouldn't do it for 1 or 2 minutes because of weather, but if you had some major delay, especially in cold weather days, then you could use that. And if you're communicating that out to parents, then they know that's where they can go to find that out. That would help us out a bunch, too.
I would think that the initial expectations and communication should come from Richmond Community Schools.
I would agree.
And then you support what we are saying.
There are some great
Sure.
examples of that at other districts. I have one specifically that I've been carrying around all year that, for example, should probably be on the we should develop some version of that as a school district, and that should be on our transportation page. So there are examples, really good examples.
And probably, we probably need to communicate more than one time.
Agree.
Because how many times does it take before somebody really, like 8 times or something like that?
Yeah.
So, I mean, using different ways to communicate those expectations, I think would be very helpful and important.
Well, and I would like to bring up, too, one of the things that the kids said at the student forum the other day about when we asked them the second question about Richmond Community Schools' needs. And one of the comments was to build a better culture of responsibility.
There you go.
That's from the kids.
Plus for that one.
We talked, as we talk about how we're going to draft our criteria, how we address our policy and stuff like that, I think we need to, we've talked about magnet schools and wanting to make it district-wide and do this and do that, so I think we need to put some thought into how that's going to affect if ESA especially stays in, because right now it's our truly only magnet school, right? I guess you can consider logos as even though it's a program.
I think there's been so much change in that school over time, I'm not sure that it would be a magnet school at this time.
More like a school of choice.
More like a school of choice, but in the sense that,
Well, I don't know.
in the sense that, well, the major curriculum variable there that has become much more of an extracurricular extracurricular part as opposed to integrated in the curriculum. And I think a lot of that happens as a result of the state mandated test that we're taking and so on, so.
Well, we changed the grade configuration also, that affected.
So a lot of things have changed over time, and so I don't know that that one variable would be a way of describing it anymore.
And the other thing that I know this probably won't be perceived well by some people, but Suzanne referenced a 2-tiered system. You know, we separate our elementary from our intermediate and our high school. I mean, would a 1-tier system work? I mean, why could we not? I rode on a
Assets. We'd have to have way more buses than we have.
Well, and that was one of the questions that was kind of interesting. As I was going through the data, I noticed we have 20 routes.
That's actually a mistake. I don't know where that came from.
Okay, I'm thinking we
20
have
routes?
60 buses.
There are currently 39.
20 in the morning, 20 is.
Yeah,
30
that's
routes,
what
yeah.
I
So
understood.
20 in
20
the
morning,
morning.
20 afternoons.
But you have to have some-
Right.
To and
40.
from.
So a route is from,
Well, no, there are 39 people out on
39
any
people.
given time, so there are 39 routes, so that's not true. It's not 20 in the
means
morning,
there's
20 in the
39
So
afternoon.
it's
buses out on the
78
road.
routes.
that's what I'm saying. That didn't make sense to me. I'm sitting there thinking, if we have 20 routes, we got 60 buses, then we can solve the problem by hiring more bus drivers.
Yeah, well, that is also easier said than done, my friend.
So it's 40 routes.
Correct.
Okay.
And that doesn't include a lot of the middle day stuff, but that's 2 from school. 40.
That's a big difference.
Do we know how many are transported to, like, ESA? I know that at one time, because that question had come up before, that they said that about half
Yeah, that's the number I've heard, and I thought we had to pull that
Of
out,
their-
actually.
Yeah, I think
Didn't
it's
we
in
pull that
your-
out? I think it's in the pack.
It is 44%.
44% is from outside their district.
That's actually dropped some, because it was higher than that.
We probably, at some point, we'll have to reexamine if, since we do have that program at ESA, if we don't have that program at some point in the future, whether we would keep it as an,
Right.
Well, we have to think about the impact of, if we didn't have that program, the impact of those students going back to their home school, what impact is that
Right,
going to have
right,
on the other
right.
schools? So,
Not to mention, currently, in order to, I mean, I guess you could argue it's a star route or it's a Hibbard route, but the route that goes all over town also picks up Hibbard students from all over town, and then they're shuttled over to Hibbard. So, while the other routes are drawn based on the territory around Fairview, the star routes are east, west, north, south, and then Hibbard third and fourth graders are also picked up at that time. So that's another set of students. Then you'd have to figure out how to get them to school, and they're scattered. Like, most of them are currently in the Charles district, so they're bussed in on a Charles buses, and then they're transported over, but not all of them. We have a route that goes all over the west side and collects those students for both Star and Hibbard, and then there's one that goes east and one that goes
well, and
Would be
then
rethinking.
that might be another program that needs to be
Yes. it's
looked
right.
at and rethought, or, for efficiencies. So, so we have established tonight that our priority is to transport our students to and from school safely. That is the number one priority. And then the second thing is that we want efficiencies looked at and established, hopefully, and that our administration has a pretty big charge ahead of them to evaluate, not necessarily that, but maybe evaluate, to look at the programs that we are offering and the impact that it has on transportation and other impacts that it might have also.
And amongst those programs, would you consider field trips a program?
I don't think I would.
Well, we haven't talked about field trips, so
We can actually get a cost for that.
That's what I'm saying.
Just the cost,
There is a
average
budget.
cost, just so that we would know what it costs. Wouldn't that be important?
There's a budgeted amount, obviously, but
We have
then
100,000 budgeted now.
okay,
But it
so
often goes-
is that budgeted through Sodrel, or is that budgeted through Richmond Community Schools?
Budgeted through the contract. We set up originally in
Okay,
the contract.
through Sodrel. So we have $100,000, and then, but it,
that portion of the levy is designated to field trips.
But the expense probably isn't the major concern. It's probably the amount of time and,
Well, and also, our Richmond Community Schools often goes past that dollar
Yeah.
amount.
In 2013, we paid 120,000 plus for field trips.
So that's
we were
something that we need to-
20,000 over the
Yes.
100,000 we had allocated.
okay.
And that is what we paid. There are collections in the schools for, I think, some non-curricular field trips as well, that some schools do that where they'll charge parents small
Some
amounts.
grants.
And grants, that's right. So
Okay, so help me with, is the $100,000 through the contract, is that just a pot of money that anybody can tap into, or is that allocated to our schools based on per pupil?
it's allocated to the schools based on type of school. We do an allocation for elementary, middle school, and high school. And we try to purpose those funds to the need based on
what we've had in the past and what we've
Availability of
used
other
and
funds.
things like that. And we do, if one building is over and one building is short, we utilize those dollars wherever we can, so that in the end, it's always going to be the 100 is definitely covered. But, so the billables are as little as we can possibly make them, but they're
It also
still
includes
billed.
athletics. the high
It
school.
also what?
It includes the athletics.
Oh, it does?
Yes.
That $100,000 includes the athletics?
Yes.
Those are considered field trips.
So is that something
That's gotta be the
else
majority
that
of
the
it
administration
Probably
could
counts for the overage.
delve into?
Athletics
probably
is
accounts
about
for the
30
I
of
think
it.
it's about 30 or 40,000.
It's about 30, 32.
40,000.
Mhm.
Yeah, we can
With
know
us
exactly
having the
what
motor
that is.
coach, that has gone down some. Actually, probably quite a bit compared to previous years, but we have about 30 of that 100 to athletics.
Well, with the motor coach, where does the funding come for that then?
Athletics pays for that.
Athletics pays for that, I guess.
So they pay for the expenses of the motor coach?
Most of the time, we do have to do some of them, but most of the time they can cover those. Because we do have some other groups that use the motor coach. It's not strictly athletics that we let, I guess, use that motor coach. So we try to work with them on that.
Primarily.
Okay, well, now we know about, about that, and
I think if
efficiencies
I'm-
need to be established
If I'm
there.
hearing correctly, we really, other than the basic transportation, we need to pretty much put cost to all of the others that are not built in.
I don't know
think
if we
that's what I
need,
mean. Well, I mean, we need to know, if we're talking about budget, we are going to need to have some sense of what it costs you in order to
well,
make some.
but I guess,
Unless you tell us there's something else that we don't need to cost
well,
out.
no, I guess I'm just thinking of if we're going to evaluate, like we bus students back and forth between Dennis and Tess for a math class. We do the wings, I guess I'm kind of more interested in evaluating the efficiencies of those programs.
Yeah, I think that we have to do them simultaneously, I think, because as we're looking at efficiencies, we need to look in terms of students and how long they're on the bus and getting there, and I think that at times it certainly might be more timely if we had the teacher in the place, to have the teacher there rather than keeping the student on the bus for an hour, getting them to and from. Most places, if we had the teacher and they were available, we could probably within 10 minutes go to another building, because our buildings are not that far apart. So there's some things that we would want to look at there when we're looking at that as well.
Because you have the orchestra, where I think we bus students all over to
We
go
do.
to the Hibbert building for orchestra. So, I mean, there's,
Well, and one of the things, for example, that takes at least two shuttles, actually it's probably a third route that's off, is the third and fourth graders that go to Hibbert. If they were all on the same bell schedule, we could eliminate 2 shuttles to Hibbert.
That's something we would need to.
That's
look
one of the
at.
efficiencies.
That's
that we
an
look at is-
efficient thing.
well, maybe we just need to have 3 intermediate schools and then have early college and logos in each of the 3 schools.
Are you ready?
And I don't know that
This
that
wasn't
doesn't
on,
cause,
was
well, I don't know that doesn't cause another
wasn't, yeah.
problem. I'm just saying that is one headline quickly.
Headlines.
Okay, great conversation.
Mark's over
Anything
smiling.
else for the good of the cause that, so we need to talk a little bit about next steps here, because obviously there is a financial piece.
Yes.
And we do have a finance committee meeting this next Tuesday, and I would think that we would be able to begin some of this conversation there, and be, hopefully then be able to come back to the board and talk some more. Maybe at our next board meeting, maybe we'll be ready to talk about some of the efficiencies and maybe begin working on board policy. I'm thinking that maybe that would be, I don't know whether that's ahead of where we'll be, but it's a thought anyway.
I guess we'll just have to start to work and see how quickly we can move.
Exactly,
'Cause I don't know
exactly.
how long it'll take us.
And so the Finance Committee meets at 1:30 on Tuesday, and of course, it's
It
a
is
public...
Tuesday? I think I had it on Monday or something. for some
Tuesday.
reason.
Yeah, it's the third Tuesday now of every month.
Okay.
And obviously, it is a public meeting, so please,
Okay,
we'll get that advertised.
In terms of how we could start to prepare, what would be the data that would be most helpful to get started, knowing that we will have to collect quite a bit of information? What would be a priority? I'm trying to think about how we might begin that first session.
Could we process this, what
Yeah, I'd
we
like
have
to.
talked about tonight, and then anybody that has suggestions, could we
Get them to me?
get to you by
We have
by tomorrow, by yesterday?
Yes.
Because we want to make sure that we set the agenda.
Right,
So we
yeah.
need time to do that. So,
Yeah, because the agenda has to be set by 1:30 on Friday.
well, we have to
Well, it
advertise
doesn't have to be
it.
set, it has to be advertised. But
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I want to process it because I'm not
So
quite.
by
I just kind
Friday,
of wanted to
would
hear what
Friday
we
be?
discussed
Yeah.
about tonight before.
Have to be an Indian Friday, but we'll work on it. Somebody
okay.
take the messages.
If people that get it, process it quicker, just get it to
Get
Dr.
it anytime. If you think of something we need to work on, get it to me immediately, and then we'll just start as it comes in.
We'll just, everybody's kind of wilting.
Is that what you
As
call
I'm
it?
looking around, I see people wilting here. I don't know why. It was such a invigorating conversation, you know. So, thanks again, bus drivers. We appreciate you and
Thank you.
appreciate your comments.
Board meeting. Okay, well, let's move this.
Okay, we are ready to move on to our second public commentary. Doesn't look like we have anybody. So now, board reports, old business.
Jay wants to say something else.
Oh. See, I knew that once you started talking, you wouldn't be quiet.
So you do know Jamie.
I have a question about the selection of the superintendent.
Okay.
Would it make any sense to get a superintendent that is a native of this area? Why do we have to go outside the area to bring somebody who's not familiar with our needs?
It doesn't have to be from outside. The application process is open to anyone who wishes to apply.
So we do not have any qualified?
The superintendent's license is the
Yes.
restricting factor.
Oh, it is a restricting factor, okay.
Right.
They're very-
Yes, it is.
Doctorate degree.
And a doctorate. That is in our board policy. We have a board
Dr.
policy.
Poindexter not interested on the position?
We're trying to entice her, but so far, we haven't quite gotten there yet.
Because I think she'll be better suited for the position since she's a native of this area. She knows what our needs are.
Well, actually, I've had superintendencies, and so I need more time to play.
She will.
Okay.
Likes that word retired.
Also
Thank
about,
you. That was a good suggestion.
Well, a vote of confidence, that was very nice.
about the students' rights. We were talking about that the students have no rights the rights are dictated by Richmond Community School. Is that correct? Is that what I heard before?
Never heard that.
No.
You mean
To ride the bus for transportation, yes.
Oh.
The rights are set by the school policy. Doesn't the state give the board money for the students' education?
Yes.
Is there any guidelines attached to that on transportation
That we have to provide it.
that you have?
Have to provide it.
Now, do they provide any money to pay for the
Our
transportation?
people are taxed, and that's how
But the
we...
money that is given by the state
Yeah.
to the school board?
Real estate property taxes pay for the transportation piece. So when you get your property tax statement, a portion of that comes for student transportation.
But
So the state doesn't set any guidelines
yes,
regarding?
they do. They actually set some the guidelines are that, we have as Karen is just explaining, an area where we can tax, but we may not always get the amount of money that it needs to pay for the cost of transportation.
They don't pay their taxes.
That's what we're facing right now.
That's where we are.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Thanks, Jamie.
Spill and talk to tap into TIF.
Okay.
Transportation.
Now, board reports, old business.
Yes. Do we have any
It's through last.
board reports, old business? I don't have anything.
Well, I think it's obviously
Yeah.
important for us to contact our legislators.
Yes.
Kelly did a great job, didn't she?
Yes.
And do you have anything on that, Misty?
I'm
Kelly,
sorry, I was
McDermott.
talking. I was
McDermott.
talking to. Oh,
Legislative.
sorry. I'm sorry, I was talking to Ms. Tarankowski. Yes, we
You
had
will
a
go to timeout.
good. We had I felt a good conversation with discussion. Karen Scow presented a PowerPoint presentation that you're all familiar with to discussion, and it really, I think, was eye-opening to our teachers. Included in the minutes, because we're kind of limited to how we can lobby our teachers. So included in the discussion minutes are the legislative contacts and who we're encouraging them to contact based on the minutes. And then we are putting together a letter. Our legislative contact on the board is Mr. Slifer, so we're going to let him see it first, and Dr. Poindexter, and then start asking parents and teachers. And there was an additional update. Is there an additional update that you had this week, or am I thinking of another bill?
There was an additional update. It was at the end of last week.
Okay.
And it had to do with what Kelly referenced quite a bit in her speech. And that is that they are looking at additional dollars to charter schools that are on top of what they have discussed with the complexity index. So that is something that's being discussed.
Yeah, $1,500 per student additional.
Yeah, and the only other update or this week that I've seen so far is that the Ways and Means Committee is meeting, but they are not discussing the school funding formula. They have excluded that from discussion topic. So that was an interesting thing to see come through, because usually they don't exclude topics. So
Really?
yeah, so we'll keep kind of watching that, and we'll let you know as soon as we know they're going to start talking.
Our
about
local legislators have a legislative update the last Friday of February at 8 o'clock at IU East. And
AM or PM?
AM.
Say that again.
It's the last Friday, so it's at 27th. 27th. And all three of our legislators will be there. Representative Saunders, Representative Ham, and Senator Rotz.
Can you send me an email on
I will. And they give an update on their end, and then it's open, kind of open mic. And I did ask questions at the last one. That was their first one. But they were just kind of getting their feet wet on all the legislation. Now, I think it would be a good time for us to have representation there and ask the right questions. It's also televised as well on WCTV, so it's good.
I was looking at an ISBA review of current legislation that's being considered, and I was sort of surprised, but sort of curious to see that there's a bill up that is going to suggest that ISTEP be replaced by an old friend of ours, NWEA.
And so I thought, how many tests ago was that?
So, just interesting to see what goes around comes around.
I wanted to also suggest, if people are writing to their congressman, these were suggestions that were given to me from when Senator Alan Paul was in office, that they don't always have a lot of time to read a lot of stuff, so he preferred bullet points, make it simple and quick and easy to read. Bullet points were appreciated. And also from one of the others, I can't remember who said it, but said that on certain things they had only gotten like 5 emails. So that doesn't put a lot of pressure on them to do anything. So we do need to individually respond. and get as many other people to do so as well.
The interesting thing is, after I was elected to be the policy liaison, I called the ISBA, and that position has been obsoleted. It really is no longer really a valid position.
On the board?
Yeah, it's really, it's been an obsoleted position. But the interesting thing is, they said, but it's coming in June or July, you'll see there's a new initiative out, and then this policy position will pick back up with this liaison. Well, interesting enough, I just read their latest article, and it's all talking about their grassroots initiative and what that position is going to turn into. But then I laughed about it because the session is over the end of April, and this is going to start in June. So it really doesn't do us any good for this year.
All about next year, Jeff.
Yeah, but it's really, actually, I don't, out of this last journal has a lot of good articles in it.
Yes, it does.
It's one of the best journals that I've received.
Talks a lot about policy.
And, well, that's why I'm also bringing it up, because Allie is going to be, forcing me to talk about our policies and how we're going to go over our policy reviews. And there's a nice article by ISBA in here about policies. So, just a heads up.
Elisa, did you have something you wanted to share? Did I miss you? Or
You're talking about retirement.
well, we know that. You can see it in her eyes.
Magic word.
I do want to make one comment here. Actually, it's a compliment to Karen. We did get a request early in the morning from Jeff Butts, who's the superintendent in Wayne Township, and he is heading up much of the legislative work of all the urban districts in the state. And he wanted some new information regarding that he was going to use for the equity index. And I rushed into Karen. She got it ready, and we had it off to him. And it was needing it, just immediately. So I really appreciated that. And so I know people here are supplying whatever they can to the urban school group to get it in and get it to the legislators.
I was going to ask also, Dr. Poindexter, if you have any information or updates that you could give concerning the I-STEP fiasco.
Well, we do. Kathy is actually the one that's mediating the conversations among our group here.
Yeah, as you are aware, the test is much longer this year, and I think surprisingly longer for many of us. Our third graders could be spending 10 and a half to 11 hours doing testing, and that's not in counting if they have a book 2, which is a pilot for next year. So we were making our schedules and moving forward to do the testing, and then of course on Monday, Governor Pence put out the executive order that said we're going to shorten I-STEP. But then the DOE has responded that he really doesn't have the authority to do that. We're going to move forward as planned. And that's really how we are proceeding, is we're going to make our schedules and take the tests as planned. But Superintendent Ritz has requested a meeting of the State Board of Education on Friday. And at that time, she's going to make some requests. I don't know whether they'll be granted or not. But one would be that we would drop I-Read 3 this year, which would put us a little bit in a bind because we use that data for our third grade academy. And the other would be that the testing would proceed, but we would use accountability only for the federal government purposes. We wouldn't use it to grade our schools or to evaluate our teachers this year because there's so much unknown in this test. At the last meeting of the State Board of Education, she did do a few things that are sort of a departure from what we've done in the past. In the past, practice test has been given under the exact same conditions as the operational test. It's been timed. It's been held to that strict confidential level. This year, we just got guidance on this today. Actually, last night at 9:48, we got guidance on it that said, this year the practice test, we give it to teachers and they use it instructionally. It's not timed. They can have kids try to solve the problems and then walk through the problems and, how would you approach this problem? And so the practice tests were delivered today, and I'm guessing there are probably some teachers who are already digging into that instructionally with their students. So right now, we're proceeding as if nothing will change.
What about the consultant that Governor Pence was hiring?
Governor Pence has purportedly brought in a consultant to look at the test to say, these are things you can throw out and not give. What we've run into, and it's a political battle and our kids are caught in the middle of it, but what we've run into is we thought we had a set of standards, the Common Core state standards, and we thought we would use the PARCS, which would be the nationally aligned assessment. We decided not to go with those standards, so we created new standards, and we thought we would be able to just give I-STEP for one more year. But the federal government, as a part of our waiver, said no. You've said you're going to have college and career-ready standards, and you're going to assess on those standards. We thought there would be a pilot test last spring that we would be able to give to sort of vet some of those questions and ensure that they're statistically valid and that they would be able to be used. The U.S. Department of Education said, no, you're not going to do a pilot test. And so what we're left with then is trying to give a brand new test over brand new standards with brand new questions that have never been statistically validated. And so we're having to give twice as many questions, and the ones, some will be thrown out because they'll statistically not hold up to review, and so they'll be thrown out. And so for every question that we think we need to ask two. And so that's why the test is so much longer.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're ready to preview the upcoming meeting.
We will always have the joy of learning, and that will be social studies next time around. I think Karen will be prepared to do a wrap-up of the budget for the year end, 2014, at the next meeting. So we'll have that ready. And again, we'll probably have something else to share about what's happening at the state level, state board, and that's just about all we have thinking about now.
Okay, great.
The State Board of Education.
Somebody have a question? Okay, press conference. You guys have sat there so quiet tonight.
Worn out.
You don't have any questions? See, we did such a good job, you don't have any questions. Okay, we are ready for our bell ringer.
Okay. Well, this week, I had a chance to go to Beech Grove with Mr. Millis and a couple of the principals from our intermediate school, and to be able to have some opportunity to experience what our teachers have been experiencing with Dr. Benjamin. And it was a very good day. But then I have seen messages that are coming from some of our principals that have had that professional development over, about a year now, maybe more. And they are really going to the top level with some of the work that he's been here teaching and helping them with. And I think that's just really exciting when you see something. I certainly had nothing to do with any of this that was started, but I'm seeing what was started and seeing how it has been institutionalized. It is actually making impact. And we could give you some examples of that down the road. So that's been an exciting thing for me.
We are adjourned.